Good evening, everybody. We are coming at you live from the Luminal Pines. My name is Alan. Anatomy. Anatomy is something that most artists fear uh, for a number of reasons. For one, it's very difficult to understand and even more difficult to execute. And you would think that people, occupying these fleshy contraptions, these fleshy mech suits, that we would have a better understanding of what the human body is comprised of and is capable of, but that is often not the case. And I mean, and I'm the same way, right? I I have my difficulties in understanding, but when it comes to art, you don't have to learn every little bit of anatomy, but it can help tremendously. Even if you're not drawing humans in a realistic style, just knowing even just a bit of simple anatomy can help you even when you're stylizing your characters in any way. Because at the base of all of it, fundamentally, things that move have mechanisms within them that make them move, that give them structure. And if we understand how those composite bits fit together and function, we can in turn start to play with them. We can change them to work in ways that benefit our art. I apologize, my cat's playing with the thing of zip ties. And now he's eating a bag back there. What are you doing? Hey. He knows I'm streaming, so he's acting naughty. So if you hear me turn around and say stop, it's gonna be towards him. So with that very long preamble out of the way, how is it that we are going to be learning anatomy? If you watch last stream, then this doesn't come as a surprise. We are going to be using George Bridgman's constructive anatomy. I know he's not very easy to understand, and he may not be the best option for anyone starting to learn anatomy, but I have a pretty basic understanding of anatomy beforehand, which is why I chose Bridgman. And the reason I chose Bridgman specifically is that even though he's difficult to understand a lot of the time, enough, get out of here. Even though he's very difficult to understand, a lot of the time, I find that he can break down the body into masses in a way that I can comprehend for the most part. Right? Uh, when it comes to art, I'm very interested in drawing the three-dimensional forms of objects, and I would like to apply that to my figure drawing, my drawing of humans and characters, so on and so forth. I have a tendency to ramble a lot at the beginning of these streams, so we're gonna try and get this one kicked off really quick. I guess before we're gonna do a little show and tell, because I have to do that at the beginning of every stream to show you what I've been working on. First and foremost, I did a new full art piece right here. This is all just like pen on Bristol paper. I finished that this last week, and I framed it. Pretty cool. I'll go ahead. I have a digital scan of it as well that I'll go ahead and see if I can pull up. But I think it's pretty neat. I won't get too into the specifics of how I made it and like every little decision that came from it. And every little I have to turn around and go, wow, get out of here. When I do that, I'm not hitting him, I'm spooking him. You know what? Smacking him. I'm picking him up by his legs and I'm throwing him across. I need to crop this. Or uncrop it, I guess you could say. So here's the thing that I worked on in full. You can sort of You see it right here. So I gotta get over here. So what I really like what I did with this piece right here is I I drew it like originally, just like as a normal, like I guess pen and ink drawing with the rendering, and I wasn't too happy with how it was turning out, so I decided to render it entirely with vertical hatching, which I think was a great decision, and I think it adds a lot to the texture. And what I guess I learned from this piece, for the most part, is that when it comes to pen and ink, you have a wide variety of textures that you have access to that you don't whenever you're just painting, and you should fully utilize that spectrum whenever you're working on pieces of art. And I would like to explore this sort of styling more as we travel into the future. I think I have some ideas for some really cool things, so stay tuned with that. And that is that. See, I told you that would be very quick. I told you it would be very quick. Let's go ahead. I'm going to point my camera down so we can see what I've been working on. Or, I mean, I guess this is like where the lesson starts, because what I have been working on has just been the anatomy studies. So we're just going to go ahead and we're gonna flip the camera down and do that. You're going to have to bear with me while I do this real quick. You see, I keep my breeches pulled up to my waist because it's more comfortable. Something about having my shirt tucked in while I'm having pants on is very nice. Makes me feel like I'm put together, like constitution wise, you know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna fall apart like a robot. Okay, I have to get these silly little things turned off. Pull that up some. Perfect. You now have the overhead view. I guess I'll start by showing you off what I have back here. This was from last night, but these are some freehand anatomy studies, sketches, practice, whatever you want to call it, which I'm quite happy with because I feel like they have a level of sort of styling and flow to them that you kind of lose whenever you structure things too much. And I guess the lesson here is that you should like let loose every now and again. But I was using this brush pen right here when I was working on this. So you can see that I'm paying a lot of attention to proportion, trying to keep the torso within the three heads length. That is what that's what my measurement system is going on. I know that there are other measurement systems, so trying to keep the torso within sort of three head lengths all the way down to the groin or the bottom of the pelvis. That and keeping the outlines pretty thick while keeping the interior lines relatively thin, just so I'm not being too distracting. Also, the reason I'm cutting off the limbs is because I'm not studying the limbs, so that's kind of, I guess, it's stylistically I'm cutting off the limbs instead of just having them terminate nowhere. But I guess this is a good point to like point out the specific anatomy. So this is like a good point to point out the more specific anatomy. We have, first and foremost, you have the torso from the, I guess you could say the top of the trapezius, or you could go for the shoulder line all the way down to the bottom of the pelvis. And things what I'm looking for here, muscle wise, is you're looking for your pectoralis muscles, your major and minor. Those are going to be right here. Then right below, I'm looking for the abdominal arch, followed by the rectus abdominis, or your abs. And then the trunk right there, the obliques, they're not going to be too pronounced in most people, but you have your obliques. And then coming from your obliques attaching to the bottom of your arm, from your back, you have your latissimus dorsi, or your lats. Then you have the, you can't see it in most of these here. I guess you can kind of see it with this individual right here, but the top of the pelvis, or the iliac crest, is gonna have a little protrusion sort of right here. It's not visible in some people and it is in others. It just depends on how the body is shaped. And then when it comes to the delts, looking for that sort of like cap, there's going to be like a cap that goes over it. If you were to imagine like sort of like a little helmet, you can sort of see it right there. It sort of caps over the shoulders. Right? That's what's responsible for like raising and lowering the arms partly. And then coming up from the delts, you have the trapezius muscles. I think it's just the trapezius. And that's sort of going to rise up into the neck, into the back or base of the skull. So that's, you're always going to have some mass here. Now, it's not as pronounced on some people, but it's always going to be there because that's responsible for like raising and, or not raising and lowering your head. I guess it would be like raising your head, and it's making sure your head doesn't fall off. Yeah. And we're not worrying too much about the arms right now. I haven't gotten that far yet. I guess you also have the collarbone. For a lot of people, it depends on if they're shirtless or not, but there's always going to be, you know, you have this little V shape right here that is your, where your sternum connects to your actual collarbone, and then your collarbone extends all the way to your shoulder, your deltoid muscles, and then it's going to create a small divot right here. That'll be your clavicle. And we don't need to render all of those things all the time. It kind of just depends on what we're looking for at the moment. So when you're seeing the body from the front, you sort of see all these muscles. Note how there's a bit of overlap between the latissimus dorsi and your like bicep and tricep here. So it's like you have your abdomen, your obliques that come up here and goes into your pectoralis major, which overlaps into the arm because your pectoralis major connects to the top of your arm. It's responsible for pushing your arms forward. So you're going to have that overlap right there. And then of course the arms go down, but behind all of that, behind the abs, behind the pectoralis major, behind everything, you're going to have your latissimus dorsi. You can see that right here. And that connects from about the midpoint, a little bit lower, on your back, all the way up to the bottom of the arm. And it's going to be, I believe it connects to the center of the arm, but just how the muscle is situated, it's going to sit behind everything. So often you will see an overlap of the arms and the latissimus dorsi, and it will create this little triangular shape. But it's not going to be, I guess I could see right here. It's like normally when we draw people, or I guess when I used to draw people, it's like, oh, we have our, like, this is our like torso, and you got your abs, and you have your pelvis or whatever, right? I used to think that the arms kind of just like sat out here and sort of like we're like straight down, and that there was a bit of a gap, but now it's like they kind of like come out a bit, you know, and there's a bit of connection up here, you know, and likewise it's like, oh, sometimes I'm like, oh, the arms like are so close right here, you know, so they're always connecting, and it's like, no, they're kind of, there's a bit of like a triangular thing going on, you know what I'm saying? You have this sort of triangle where your body tapers inwards a bit, and then your arms, they have a bit of overlap, but there's always going to be a bit of a gap right here. These are awful little diagrams, I know, but you have to bear with me. So yeah, those are, you can, and the lats are a very big muscle because they're responsible for pulling your arms downwards. If you're ever doing pull-ups, you're in part working your latissimus dorsi. So that's going to create a triangular shape starting from the arms all the way back. And more importantly, I guess, it's going to create some overlap, and that can lead to some very interesting shadow shapes, as you can see, like right there, some triangular bits. I guess another important thing to note is the curvature of the spine. As you can see with this one, you can see it with this one, you can see it with this one right here. I guess from a profile, you can sort of see that this guy's a bit flexed, so there's a bit of extra flexing and turning going right here, but you have your thoracic spine right here, which sits in your rib cage. It follows the contour of the rib cage. It has some movement, very limited movement, though a lot of bending takes place down here below it. So it goes from thoracic to lumbar, which is going to curve out this way. Not as much but just a little bit more, that's responsible for a lot of twisting and turning. The spine is responsible in a lot of ways for, imagine this is the spine. It's not just going to turn up here. It is going to follow a curve from top to bottom. It's just that this part is going to curve a little bit more. So you'll see a lot of twisting, turning, bending happening right here, which can lead to squashing and stretching of your core muscles, your obliques, and your abs, and like your lower back, right? So you'll see that there. But there's always going to be a curve. People don't stand perfectly straight. If anything, they have the upper body that goes this way, and the lower body sort of goes, well, I guess it tilts more like this way, you know what I mean? But not as much, but the pelvis does have a bit of a tilt. It tilts forward a little bit. If you think about it, it's a bowl sort of, and it has to hold all your guts, and it has to hold your legs, more importantly, right? And if any of this is, if you have questions about anything, please let me know. I'll try and answer them. But yeah, you can see that. I'm trying to see if there's anything more really important in these sketches specifically that I'm looking out for. Obviously, there's a lot of differences between men and women in terms of like proportion, width. I guess that's part of proportion. Women have, as much as I hate to say the word breasts, they have boobies. You get to, I'm a middle schooler, definitely. But the thing with the breasts is that they aren't the pecs. So women, you do, I don't care what they're telling you, you do have chest muscles. But then breasts sit on top of those, and those are a separate mass in and of themselves. Not something that I need to be like drawing all the time for my needs, but if that's something you're interested in, go, and I'm not going to be doing a lesson on that here. But just know that there is mass going on there, and it sits on top of more mass, so it's like, you know, worry about gravity and everything, right? Yeah, I can't think of anything else. I guess the other important thing to note is that there can be a lot of twisting and turning within the masses themselves. So this guy's chest is facing sort of like this way, you know what I'm saying? Right, but he's also like twisting a bit like this way. We're gonna draw a very convincing like little turning thing here. This guy is sort of like, I don't know why I did a line like that. This guy is sort of like doing a twist like this way with his pelvis too. And you're gonna see that in the muscles. You'll see a bit of like rotation of the skin down here. And whether or not you choose to depict that, up to you, but just know that some things will change with perspective. So yeah, that is that right there. I guess we'll go ahead and open the sketchbook so we can go through everything. So a lot of this here really does cover a big portion of what I just talked about with the spine and everything. You have sort of the idea of having a rib cage and then a gap and then your pelvis represented by two like masses, right? That's not a perfect egg, but I was just kind of talking about what I knew about. And this is a bunch of text, so we won't talk too much about it. We'll get to this right here. So as you can see right here, this is a copy of Bridgman's drawing specifically. And what I want you to pay attention to is that you have the pelvis, which is down here, which if you look at these pages, that's that right there. This isn't perfect. I was kind of just practicing on manipulating boxes, like proportion wise. So you have your pelvis down here, followed by a gap, and then you have your rib cage, or like the upper mats, right? And this is exaggerated by Bridgman. Of course, he exaggerates whenever he's doing the teaching, so you can sort of like see everything like clearly, right? So here we have the rib cage. From the rib cage, it's split in the middle by the sternum, connecting like from the collarbone down to the arch of the ribs. And this is a very simplified, exaggerated arch, but you are going to see in a lot of people an arch right here. That's a landmark to look out for, especially down here. You have corners of the ribs. They're going to protrude in a lot of people. And what's nice about that as a landmark is that we know because the rib cage is a three-dimensional object that is symmetrical, you can draw a line from here to here and plot your perspective of someone's body as a landmark. So that makes it kind of easy to see sort of how the rib cage is turning. But more importantly, it shows kind of relation of everything else, right? We know that the pecs, they don't start right at the arch of your rib cage. I mean, I don't know if you have like large like pec muscles, but if you feel the bottom of your rib cage, you can see that there's some distance between that and where your pecs start. So your pecs aren't going to start right on this line. They'll start a little bit above, and depending on how developed your pecs are, that can change because of, like gravity and things like that. So you have your pectoralis major and minor. They sort of sit on top of each other, but they do contribute to moving the arms in the same way. Hey, get out of here. Get out of here, you little stinker. Sorry, my cat is being so silly. Yeah. So going on from that, you have your pecs that connect to your arm right here, and then there's the armpit right there. From behind, you can see the lats, right? Those wrap around to your back. But right below the pecs and before you get to your obliques, you have your bottom ribs right here, but connecting to those bottom ribs are your serratus magnus or your serratus anterior. And I had to look this up, and I put it on the Discord, a reference to it. But your serratus magnus, these little protrusions right here, you'll see it in really muscular people. Actually, what those are, it's very interesting. You have muscles that run from the bottom of your rib cage all the way to it might not be to the very bottom of your rib cage. I can't remember exactly. We're not looking at insertion points all that clearly here. We're just looking for landmarks. But you'll see that they go from the rib cage all the way behind the pecs. So they do add some mass to the pecs, and they do contribute to pushing your arms forward. But they connect to your rib cage, and they go wrap around all around the back. And they connect actually to your shoulder blades. They are responsible for gliding your shoulder blades on your back. They're that muscle that sits between your shoulder blades and your rib cage. So it's responsible for rotating your shoulder blades. Specifically, if you are rotating or moving your arms upwards, it's going to help to glide your shoulder blades like outwards, right? So it's very cool. So if you're ever doing like lateral raises or something as a workout, and you're like, why am I sore like on my sides? It's that muscle right there, which is very interesting. So then from the bottom of your rib cage to, you have those bony protrusions. Down, you have your abdominis muscles. This is a bit of a, the obliques, it is true, they do run along the side of your body. They actually run pretty much around the side of your abdominis, rectus abdominis, your abs, because that's going to run from pretty much the bottom of your sternum all the way down to pretty much the bottom of your pelvis. There's connections there. So it's going to be this long sort of almost empty looking bit that might protrude in some people. But to the side of those, you have your obliques that run to the side. This here isn't showing necessarily the oblique muscle. That's not what this big bony mass here. It kind of is, so I kind of got that wrong. I need to go and change it. What Bridgman is showing here is the iliac crest, or the top of your pelvis. So he's sort of exaggerating it here with sort of the protrusion, but the bottom of the top of the bowl of your pelvis is another landmark for the bottom mass of whenever you're drawing the body. And he's showing that as being a little protrusion here. It's not as protruded in a lot of people I've found. Some people it is, depending on the angle, but just know that that's something else that you can look out for. And then I went ahead and labeled it too. I need to change that. But yeah, you can sort of see the serratus magnus here. There is a bit of a plane change, kind of, in some people. It depends, but he really is just showing that the rib cage does end right there. Something to look out for. And you can sort of see the uses of all of these muscles right here. Again, we have the practice, those right there. Some more practice. This is very rough. Really just like these are like my first drawings where I'm like really like studying anatomy. So I mean they're pretty rough and they're kind of small. But I'm looking at for all of those things that we were talking about. Here I'm like asking myself like, okay, what am I struggling with? What do I need to improve? Some more practice. Still very rough. It's hard, man. It's hard. Here we have the body from a side view, and you can see a lot of those things that we were talking about not that long ago. So you can see the shoulder up here with your like your delts, which are gonna sort of have this like three-dimensional, like they overlay the top of the arm and the shoulder. You have the pecs that sit on top of the arch of the spine, or not the spine, sorry, the rib cage, creating that arch there. You can sort of see it there, and the rib cage does come down and around. You see it like that's the protrusion right there. Below that, you can see I mean, this would be the external oblique, everything on this side, the rectus abdominis. And then from the back, you can see the lats. They're gonna provide some mass for the back, especially when viewed from the side. And then you can see that curvature of the spine. Yeah, I think that's really there. Yeah, that's pretty good right there. Kind of just seeing it from another angle. Here we have the back, as viewed from from the back. You can see right here that the trapezius is quite a large muscle. It's a series of muscles, of course, that like extend in a bunch of different ways and layer on each other. The back is actually made of a bunch of like long, or I guess really wide sheet muscles. So whenever your back is resting, there's not going to be a lot of dimples and everything. It's only when you start to flex the muscles in your back that you're going to start to see a lot of protrusion, and we'll see that with some of these drawings over here. What's important here is that you have your trapezius, which goes from around like your mid back, right? And it goes all the way up the center of your back, all the way to the base of your skull. That's your entire trapezius. You have like your upper trapezius, of course, which connects to the nape of your neck. Goes all the way down here. You have your shoulder blades, which are going to they're going to look like this right here. I find that the shoulder blades are a good marker when you're looking at someone from behind. They're a lot of the times you can sort of like see them poke out a little bit, creating a bit of a shadow. So that's something to look out for. They're sort of going to create this like L shape along from the tops of the shoulders, pointing down a little bit. You also have your latissimus dorsi. It's a little exaggerated here. Well, no, I don't know. It depends on the person, but the lats are very, very, very big, and they do extend from the back of the arm, like the middle. You know what I mean? Or maybe it's not the back of the arm. I guess it would be like the bottom kind of, but you can see it overlap the arm. The arms kind of like sit in front of it almost, and then it extends and it comes and it tapers down quite a bit. Right? And I guess this isn't shown here, but your rhomboids connect from your shoulder blade to the center of your back. You have your, there's some muscles that run from, like in the middle of your spine and the bottom of your mid back down here. And when someone has their arms pulled back, flexed, you can see it creates a little bit of a divot right there, right? And the other important thing is that with the deltoids, they wrap around the shoulder. So they're like a cap that is like on your shoulder. So you are going to see it around the entire thing. Think of it as kind of like armor plating. If you were wearing like a piece of armor, like it almost rests on top of your arm, just like that. And you can see this is the back from like a 3/4 view. The lats stick out quite a bit. As you can see, curve of the spine. You have the abs. You sort of have right here, that's the root, or the top of the pelvis. You sort of, Bridgman here exaggerates the rib cage a little bit, but you have your lats that they come down to like your lower back, mid to lower back, up to your arms, and then in front of it, you know, because like the body is a three-dimensional thing. You can see the pecs, they sit above it or in front of it. So there's going to be a bit of overlap there. So you have your lats, which create this like little round shape in 3/4. You almost think of it as like a ball, and then the pecs sit on top of it. Here we have some cleaner sketches that are showing that, except this one. This one kind of sucks. But you see like the pecs, they sit on top. They have three-dimensionality, and then the delts from the arm sitting in front of the pecs, and we're not getting a lot of the side because the arms are covering it there. The abs, and then your serratus magnus creating some texture there, and then your obliques wrap around that, obviously. For right here, you have you can see the traps. Traps are a pretty big mess. You can see them from the front of your body. So they're gonna create a bit of a mound right here at a lot of people. So, you know, consider that. I mean, in reality, it really is just like a triangle. You know, you got boom, boom, boom. So you're gonna see that shape a lot, but that makes it easier to sort of draw if you can break it down into a like triangle like that. Because if you're drawing it in perspective, you can sort of squash and foreshorten bits of it. You have the lats here. You can show them from a 3/4 with like a little circle. They sort of almost like follow like a circle in a lot of people. You have the sort of the front of the abs right here, and then obviously you have the spine right here. You can see the shoulder blades. Right? More of the same here. Just I'm using a pen to like do it over on this one, but you can see a lot of the same things I've been talking about. There's a lot of overlap with these muscles, twisting of the pelvis compared to the rib cage. That's facing forward. This is sort of tilted a little bit. Here's some more freehand practice. You can see this one is no, it's not the same as that one. For some reason I was thinking it was the same as this one, but it's almost a similar pose, but a lot of the same stuff. Proportions aren't perfect on this one, but I was really trying to like look at the silhouette. But so you see that overlap there from the pecs. The pecs create this like little triangle right here. It goes boom, boom, and then the lats sit behind it. You can sort of see there's like a triangle that leads from sort of your that connects from the top of your pelvis and leads to the groin. Right. Here's a heavier set individual. The thing with people who have more body fat is that it's not like the fat kind of just like sits as a blob on top of people. It connects and forms differently on people for one, but it does still sit on top of all those other things. So like, of course, see like he has lats still because he's a human being, right? You have the lats, you can see sort of the curve of the spine, but you still have fat that it's going to sit on top of everything. So there's still going to be like little deformations in all of that. And a lot of men in particular tend to store fat in the stomach, in the midsection. So you'll see that quite a bit in men who have a higher percentage of body fat. You see that still has a three-dimensional form. I made sure to like do a bit of wireframing to show it wrapping. Here we have even more. This is sort of breaking down the Bridgman in terms of like shape study, right? So I have a little breakdown of it right here. Like what I like about Bridgman, you can break it down into simple shapes. You have the rib cage is just like an oblong circle with a triangle sitting on top for the traps, with circles as your delts, and the lats, they follow this circular trajectory stylistically, of course, but they still follow it. Shoulder blades, same thing right here. I don't think Bridgman actually draws like this all the time. This is just for instruction purposes. It depends how dynamically you're wanting to draw and how you're wanting to like form your silhouette, but he's sort of showing an exaggerated form of like the lats right there, and he's showing like everything underneath it. You can see the pecs, again, they're connecting to the top of the arm, so they're creating almost like a little concaveness in the armpit. And you have the stretching of the of the abs, and you can see the obliques and the iliac crest from the pelvis. Here's a bit more simple and broken down. This is kind of showing how there's a bit of a gap in between the top and bottom masses, and that's where we get a lot of our twisting and motion from. But you can still see breaking it down into simple shapes. Very, very simple and intuitive if you really think about it. Here we have demonstrated again the curve of the spine coming down. That's your thoracic section, followed by your lumbar, down to your sacral or your sacrum, which is going to follow the bottom of your spine, and it curves sort of inward into your pelvis. But yeah, and then you have all the muscles that sit on top of it, of course, and they wrap. And like a lot of, I mean, imagine the legs aren't here. Sort of like comes down and it's like the butt, you know, like the glutes. It comes down because I mean, you do have like a bottom of your body, right? And it sort of like wraps around. Here we have some more torso practice, trying to incorporate a bit of what we learned over here. You have the three-dimensionality of the lats, maybe using some more simple rounded shapes. One thing I'm paying attention to whenever I am doing these anatomy studies is like, when do I use round shapes versus when do I use like lines? And it's like, what do those communicate? Round shapes can show softness, can show shapes that are organic, but it can also show like foldings in the skin. But while straight lines communicate like strength and structure, so it's like maybe we use straight lines whenever there's more bony bits, or when we want to indicate that something is a bit stronger. Just trying to think of things like that. Here we have the back as viewed. You can sort of see because he's leaning a little bit, there's a bit of squash on the lat here and stretching here. The body is very antagonistic with its muscles, meaning that if one side does one thing, stretches, the other squashes, and vice versa. So if he's leaning, the right side squashes, and to compensate, the left side stretches. Because your muscles, they only contract as like a mechanical movement. So the other side is going to stretch naturally. We have some more of the same. You can see the arch of the rib cage coming down, lats back there, but then you have the pecs that are sitting on top. And I found that the more muscular you get, and this isn't for everybody, and it depends on how you hold muscle, but the pecs can tend to be a lot smaller than you initially think they would be. Very surprised about that. I guess I've only ever seen like crazy bodybuilders, and they have pecs that are like absolutely massive, but for like, especially if you're like a bit leaner, your pecs are going to be relatively like small in terms of like mass. They're still a mass, but they're still there. Here we have the back of the lats. The body sort of curves inwards because there's a trunk here where the lower back curves into the obliques and abs. And of course you have like the arms and the trapezius going into the nape of the neck, but specifically, I'm not paying attention to the arms muscles specifically yet, so don't pay too much attention to that. Here's a more detailed drawing of the pelvis. This is from Bridgman, as you can see from my book here, pages 136 and 137. This is to get a better understanding of like what exactly the pelvis is. This is from a side view. This is your iliac crest. So I guess if you have a pelvis right now, if you're not, if you can feel your pelvis, like go ahead and put your like arms, or not your arms, your like hands on like the bony protrusion right there. That's your iliac crest, and that's sort of where your pelvis sticks out the most. And that's the bit that we're looking for whenever we're like looking for landmarks on the body, and they're parallel. Right, so that can help us place it in perspective. But that iliac crest, as part of the ilium, comes all the way around and comes to the sacrum, which is the bottom of your spine. This is part of your spine, but the sacrum, as we saw back here, curves into the sacrum, which then curves back this way. So your lumbar curves inwards, and then your sacrum comes back. Or your lumbar curves outwards and then curves back inwards with the sacrum. And the sacrum, I mean, I know I'm like telling you guys like, oh, like if you're listening, touch your sacrum. But if you like go to your back, like right above your ass crack, this was what way we would consider our tailbone, the sort of vestigial part uh, of your body. But you can feel your sacrum right there. It's that hard, bony bit that sits at the bottom of your spine, right above your ass crack. You're welcome. And then you have all these other bits right here. These are like these bones have names. You know, it's like your pubis, blah blah blah. I don't care too much about those, but just know that you have this sort of like bowl shape, and there are bones right here that curve around, and you can see that right here. It's you have this bone right here that curves inwards and sort of gives a little bit of shape to the bottom of the glutes, and that can show us, you know, that there's a bottom to the body, right? And that gives it structure and makes sure everything doesn't fall out, because that would suck. That would really suck, actually. But you can see a bit. This is a bit more detailed right here. You can see that the pelvis is wide. It's very wide. It flares out because it does need to act as a bowl for your guts, but it also acts as an anchor point for a lot of your muscles, for your gluteus medius and maximus, but also your obliques, your abs. A lot of muscles have connection points to your pelvis. So that's why it's so wide and flared out. There's a lot of stuff that needs to connect to it, and it needs to act as a bowl to hold all the guts. You have your lumbar spine down to your sacrum. I don't know exactly how to say it. Of course, you can see the leg here. We're not paying too much attention to where the leg is, but I don't know if it's exactly halfway through the pelvis. I haven't gotten that far yet in the anatomy studies, but just know that the leg does kind of, it's not at the bottom of the pelvis. It's sort of like in the middle, and there's a bit more pelvis that goes below it. But also interestingly, and you can see it in this drawing right here, your legs do connect at sort of like an angle to your pelvis. So we'll keep that in mind as we move on in later streams. And it is a ball and socket joint, so it's going to be very mobile, your legs. But I guess the important thing right there is that your legs don't face directly straight down. They have a bit of an inward curve. And that sort of goes back to talking about how like the body is made out of like antagonistic muscles, but also antagonistic body structure. It's like we have zigzags in our body, which makes it kind of easier to learn. But as you can see right here, this is a very simple rendition of the gluteus maximus, which is sort of like this like little cylindrical thing that like wraps around, you know, it's that big part of your butt, and then your gluteus medius, which is going to sort of sit above that. And they both connect right here, but there's going to be a bit of a line or a lump or a divot that's like formed right here from those two muscles wedging together, and they sort of come down the back of your leg, connecting to your thigh, and then you have your quads, which are going to connect to the front. We're not quite there yet, so we're not going to have to worry about that. Yeah, and that leads me to this is I accidentally skipped some pages, so my bad with that. It's totally my bad. Here's some more studies right here, taking into account everything, you know, that I'm learning. I'm trying to simplify along the way as well. You know, you don't want to have too much going on, especially if you're working with pen. Trying to show those overlapping muscles, making them darker, but also trying to pay attention to the silhouette. Same thing. These are from earlier today, and they're sort of trying to do the same thing as here. This guy had like a little cloak on. I guess I could like show that better with. That might help a bit to show that. But yeah, you can. I'm drawing the faces just because I haven't been drawing a lot of faces here recently, because I've just been doing like strictly like bodily anatomy. So, you know, trying to make it a bit more interesting. But you have sort of your delts going into your lats, followed by the trunk with the abs, and the obliques going into the pelvis, which these folks are wearing underwear. Thank goodness. Oh, I just draw my pen. But yeah, trying to draw from different angles too. And that leads us to what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be doing some some practice. I could probably use the other side. Can we see through that? We can't. I don't want to. I'm not going to waste this paper. I'll use it again later, but I just don't want to have. Hey, this is from last stream. Let's go. For stream purposes, like a clean sheet of paper. Perfect. So today we're going to be drawing pretty much just more of the same, because this is like practice and you can sort of see the process a little bit better. But before, I'm going to set up here real quick. I'm going to go and take a quick break to stretch, drink some water, and I hope that you all will do the same. Study up on your notes. We'll go ahead and label this right here. So I think we're going to start with like pencil for the first few drawings, and then we'll finish up with some freehand just to sort of like, we're gonna look at the structure and then we're gonna like loosen it up and try and like stylize it a little bit more, but I'm gonna layer this up here. Yeah, perfect. I'm gonna be right back. We'll say 4 to 5 minutes. So see you then. I don't know if you have any questions. Put them in the chat and I can answer them when I get back. I'm not baiting engagement. I know I would have questions. So if you have questions, please ask them. Okay, I have returned. Guess I need to see what it is exactly we're gonna be doing here. I think that the website we're gonna use again is Line of Action because it has a good filter system and quite a bit of reference images. Just in my reference pool alone, it's 3,024 images. I still see a lot of repeats though, so I don't know exactly how that works. But I'm gonna go ahead and pull up this here. I'm wondering if... No, that's not on there. Sorry, I need to make sure that this is capturing the correct thing. For some reason, the capture isn't working on here, but that's all right. I can probably just do a... I'll probably just go ahead and do it as a screenshot, or not a screenshot, but as a to Command Shift for this. Perfect. Here's the first image we're going to be using. I'll bring it up. Top right corner. Yeah, does that work? We'll do left. We'll do like 3. Like we'll do like 1, 2, 3, right? And then we'll do the freehand ones after that. I think that'll establish a good rhythm. So let me go ahead and get another thing set up. We're gonna open up our drink of choice, which is gonna be a delicious can of sparkling water. And oh, it's so good. And oh, it's so good. Sure. Okay, let's get to drawing. I say as I'm not drawing. Let's get to drawing. Let me go ahead and move this to the side a little bit more. So for this dude, what I'm seeing here, I'm sort of just gonna lightly sketch out our masses for one. Like that's sort of what I'm seeing right there. Then we can sort of give it some structure, right? So I see the sort of back as this sort of looking mass right here. It's a cube. You can sort of see the side right there. I see there's a bit of tilt to that right there. If we're gonna think of like the spine as sort of like being that, there's gonna be a little bit of, I guess it's more like, well, you can sort of see it. It looks straight from this angle, but there would be sort of like a curve to the back right there, and it's gonna sort of curve back down. Here we have our trunk portion, but there's gonna be some overlap, because he's sort of like looking this way. This is a very like difficult pose to do as like a warm-up, but that's fine. I'm here for the challenge. Then what's interesting is because he's bending, the sort of pelvis is gonna look more like forward facing, and you got his glutes and everything down there. Let's go ahead and get these other shapes out of the way. First of all, traps in the back right there. See those sort of creating a bit of a like a bow shape as they come inwards, especially to like the spine. Here we have the lats. We're gonna exaggerate them with their curvedness a little bit right there, but they sort of come down like that right there, and they connect the arms, which are reaching forward a little bit in the front. And this one's sort of sitting more back right there. And we can see that there's a bit of folding of the skin right here. This is sort of the the mass of the gut sort of being like brought inwards, and it's overlapping our lats a little bit right there. I guess I can get my eraser out. Yeah, like that mass right there. And then we have the underwear that's sort of riding up a little bit. Yeah. Doing a bit of pinching. Same with this right here. You can see there's sort of it's a combination of the squashing of the abs and the top of the pelvis sort of giving that structure, which makes it sort of squash like that. And the lats here, because the arm is pulled backwards a little bit, aren't as pronounced. They come up a bit more like this right here. And then, of course, from the front, because you can see a bit of the front of that plane, you can see a bit of the chest. We'll show like that right there. And then you have the curvature of all of these sort of muscles right here. You can see a bit of the shoulder blade right there. Same a little bit like right here. You can sort of see the shoulder blade work its magic there. You can see it's a little bit of the delt cap right there. But because the arms have overlap with the lats, that's what you're seeing right here. The lats going up and above the arm. You can see they're sort of connecting to the middle of the arm right there, and they are creating a shadow. They're definitely creating a shadow right there. And we're not paying too much attention to the anatomy of the arms right now. From the bottom, they seem to look like pretty flat. Right. And then of course we have squashing of this right here. You got your delts being squashed up here. You can't see much of the traps up here because they are bending forward, you know, because you have like your head that's right here. But it would be sort of up here, but because he's bending, you know. You also see sort of, this is what I was talking about with you have these two sort of muscles that line your spine right here. They sort of create this sort of valley. We don't need to show that too much, but just know that it is there. Coming down to the glutes, which have some mass, you know. And then the legs are protruding from that, and they're going forward a bit. You can see right here, you can see the front of the quads are here with like the gluteus maximus and medius, you know, leading into the rest of the full trunk of the leg, right? You can also see his quads from the front. That's how you know he's really muscular. Is like you can see his quads pretty well defined, right? Go ahead and we'll take our darker. I'm just doing the silhouette for like effect, you know. This arm is doing a lot of like weird different things over here. You can see a bit of like the armpit muscles And then you see definitely a lot of, because there's a lot of foreshortening. You go here, you can see like the elbow is like right there. We're not going to do too much of that right there. Just know that they're there. And there's a lot of skin folding going on right here with those muscles sort of converging. Keeping it loose too. I don't want to go too crazy with the detail. And of course, yeah, the head right there. Yeah, you can see Bridgman would probably make a few different choices here. Of course, it is the artist side that goes into a lot of different things. One thing I probably could have done differently here is I could have foreshortened this midsection a little bit more. Just know that there is a bit of, he is like leaning forward a bit. That's an awful arrow. He's leaning forward. Yeah. Very fun though. Let's move on to the next one. Gotta find it. Hmm. I found the next one. Gotta change out the screenshot here. I'm drawing a lot of men, one because line of action seems to put more men in there than women. I have it on both, but for some reason it just does a lot of men. Maybe just recognizes that I'm a dude. I'm not entirely sure why. Let's go ahead and do this. We got like the mass of the rib cage right there. It's gonna be more like an egg like this right here with the shoulders like attached to it. And we see they're kind of up and about like that right there. It does sort of come down, up, like that right there. And we see he's doing a bit of bending. So there's a bit of like this going on right here. Then you're gonna have your pelvis right here. If you think of the pelvis, there it's like our protrusions right there, connected by the trunk, right? They sort of like lean this way a little bit. I guess we're gonna talk about like the legs would connect like in here kind of roughly. But this is very good because you can sort of see all the muscles like in their sort of stretch position, but also you can sort of see them a bit differently. So first off, you can see his serratus magnus in his ribs, like right here, they're sort of doing that. We're gonna stylize it a bit here, of course, but you can see them pretty clearly right there. You can also see how his abs come down, and they got some lumpiness to it, because these are sort of fleshy masses that sit on the body. You can see the sort of the curve of this side right here because it's being squashed, and you can see his his hips right here from the top of his pelvis. Pretty well defined on this guy, all things considered. And then we got a lot of stretch going on the side as he leans this way, some and a bit more squash right here. It's a bit more curved. But through it all, you can see that the lats are here around the back. And his pecs aren't very well defined here at the bottom because they're being stretched upwards, they're being pulled a bit. But they are there, and you can see his nipples from it. You can sort of see his pecs sort of form a bit right here as they connect to this arm up top. See that? And sort of creates this meeting with the delts. Right? Same thing with the collarbone. You can sort of see that right there. And you have the traps that are raising up from the back. There's this like V shape being made from the collarbones in the chest muscle, pushing like upwards because it's sort of curving down that way. Sorry, I need to bring my mic closer. I apologize for that. You can also see that, you know, you got the arms here. You can see right here the delt, right? And of course, there's a lot of nonsense that happens down here with the armpit. We don't need to worry about that quite yet. There's your dismembered, dislocated arm. See, you know, we got the pecs right here that create this sort of like divot shape, but then you see the lats rise from the back to meet the arm, and it creates this right here. Like that. Right there. Because the delts meet the traps in the front, there will be a bit of a fold as they sort of touch right here. Of course, you have his neck that's raising from this right here. I don't think the size of that head is completely accurate. Probably needs to be bigger because we probably need like to divide this into like thirds, like from like right here, be like 1, 2, 3. So we're gonna go into the groin. He's got his pecker hanging out. Not hanging out, but you know. What I always find most interesting, like with these things, is like the lats. Like I think the lats are a very good like indication of like three dimensionality. I think it's very useful. You know what I mean? See, I mess up with the head. Is it probably just needs to be a bit more like down here, more like that. There's a head there, believe it or not. So I have to go ahead and darken some of these areas up to like show what's going on. The lats, you can see that there's a bit of, you can see it sort of like behind coming into the rib cage, which is sort of like down there-ish. And definitely his pelvis is like right there. I'm sort of exaggerating it for effect right here so you can see it. His belly button. If you think like the abs, technically underneath all of it there is this sort of like, I don't know, like a sideways like flying like wing, like a thing with the wings. You got that, the arch right there. So you have his jaws, his drawers. Same thing with like how the body does overlapping. The legs, they will touch down here a lot of the time. They will rub together because the femur connects so like at an angle and so close in the pelvis. The masses on either side will push in the thigh region. Snips. This nip is a bit more to the right because he is doing a little turn. See the lat right there? She's like little bones. Exaggerating those delts just a little bit. I find the delts, if you use like straight lines for it, can make them look very strong. And sort of see the arm sort of there like that. You know, you can see those landmarks. You see that right there. You know, I guess in this case it would be tilting a little bit more like this way, right? Then you have those, the top of the pelvis right there. You know what I mean? And you can use that to sort of gauge like a pose a little bit better. All right, making good progress on that. So there's that fella. We're gonna move on to the we do a lot of like hatching. Bridgman loves to do a lot of like hatching with the pencil. I think it's better to like the less is more approach, which you don't have to, obviously. You don't have to, like, it depends on like what you're trying to do. Like I'm looking for like simplification within like a reason. You know what I'm saying? You picking up what I'm laying down? All right, let's go ahead and move on to the last one. I swear to God, we will draw a woman if it comes up. I just have not come across one yet. Yeah, this one's pretty good. You're gonna see a bit of butt in it, but nothing graphic. My cat is being silly. Boom. There you go. There's the last one. So I find that for like line of action, this model specifically is in like for like all the woman ones. They must have been the only person that they could find to like do these. Same thing as before. We're gonna find the big masses. We have the rib cage right here, right? Then we have the pelvis, which is a bit more like down here. We're seeing some curvature going. We definitely see a bit of like the spine going right here, followed by quite a bit of curve on the spine right there. We're gonna try and find everything. So we see the lats connecting to the, we have the arms right here. We have the lats connecting, right? You can see the abs from the trunk pretty easily in the front. There's a bit of taper right here from the lats. And then if we were to look at this as like a box, it would be like right here, and then it would be like moving that away is kind of like the arms up here. So those are like our big shapes, right? Maybe the see one thing that's hard when you're like trying to do like just the specific anatomy, you're sort of neglecting a lot of things like gesture and whatnot. Keep in mind, if artistically you are doing this, you don't want to, you want to try and like find a healthy middle ground between like doing the anatomy itself and like artistic things like gesture, volume, weight, things like that. So we see from the lats right here, because the lats are this form, there's going to be a bit of a pinch as it forms with the arm up here, especially since the arm is going forward, and you can see the same thing kind of going on the other side. You can see that there's a bit of a structure to the delts right here. And you can see the traps sort of coming out of it. See, her traps aren't massive, but they still are there. There are this form, this triangular form that sits above all else. You can definitely see she's doing some twisting here, so you're seeing like a bit of her like ribs coming from up here. But still got the lats right there. You can see her shoulder blade right here. Because her arm is moving forward, her shoulder blade is being pulled this way, right? And then because she's flexing a lot on her back, we're seeing a lot of those striations from those muscles. And we could spend forever getting lost in each specific muscle, or we could choose to take the artistic route and not render all of it, which is what I'm going to opt to do. But you see that the lats right here on the other side, like on this side, they create an overlap. We're gonna cut off the arms right here, right? Of course, because this is a woman, you can see that because she's a three-dimensional object, you can see the front of her body from the back. And you can see that pretty much they're going over her lats, but you can see the string right there. Middle of the back falls a bit more over here as this sort of curves out a bit more. She's very trim in the waist, which would make sense because women store body fat differently than men. They don't store it around their waist as lower it gets. Then we have all this junk. What's fun about this little bit right here is that this kind of like aligns with the sacrum a little bit, this like triangular shape right here. So if you were to think about the spine, that would almost be like your sacrum right there. Not perfectly, it's a bit further down, but it still checks relatively and sort of see the head sort of looking up some. You can see there's, because the gluteus medius goes into sort of like the thigh right here, you see a bit of like pinching because there is a pretty thick muscle right there, like relatively. And of course you have then you have like the hamstring, which hangs a bit right here, you know. You know, this is looking like that, like, you know, like that one photo of like a Omni Man, you know what I'm saying? I don't know if any of you would like know that one specifically. Pretty good photograph of Omni Man. I get too in the weeds of like the legs right here. Just know that they sort of go right there. There's gonna be some pinching from down here as the gluteus maximus goes into like the legs down here because they're like curving that way, kind of. You know what I'm saying? Proportionally, again, not perfect, but we're paying attention to the shapes. It's the shapes that count. Gotta be a bit more gestural. Fold right there. Maybe I made her a bit too long. I don't know. She's pretty tall. I should see. One of my biggest issues is sort of taking sort of the bottom of the or the I keep on getting my directions messed up. It's like taking the top of the pelvis and sort of making the trunk too long, I guess is what you could say. Like it's different a lot in a bunch of people, but it's sometimes it's kind of hard to like find that like good like midline. You know what I'm saying? I'll get better at it. Proportion is definitely one of the things I need to study. It is not one of my strong suits, but I'll get better with it as time goes on. Perfect. And you can sort of, I guess you could sort of show the spine a bit more. You can see the curve of the spine here, definitely. And you can see like the rhomboids and the traps sort of doing their thing right here. Especially like these muscles right here. Yeah. Yeah, am I right or am I right? I'm right. All right. So that is the this sort of sketchy portion. We're going to move into doing ending with a little bit of freehand. We're going to make the freehand very quick. And you know what? I might not even pull up the reference that I'm using with the freehand because I'm going to be doing them so quick. And you'll kind of just get to see it happen in real time. You can't see through that too much. I mean, I guess you can, but it's all right. Sorry, I just made sure to reformat everything. And the goal with this is we're gonna try to keep it smooth. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna do 3 of these, and we're just gonna try and keep it. We're trying to keep it loosey goosey. Pay attention to things like flow and stuff just a little bit more. This individual, he's got a little bit of a frog butt thing going on. He's also like sitting on like a pedestal, so that's gonna sort of create shape as he's sort of like straddling it. I'm not gonna worry too much about the legs themselves right here. See, that's a fold right here as we go into the back. Curves upwards. Have that right there, and the delts here. Definitely have the lats. pretty good form right there. Then on this side, he's like raising his arms. There's a bit of folding of the skin going on there, which I'll show it that. And then as it comes down, see his lats again right there, and there's a bit of stretch. See, we got a bit of compression over here, stretch over here, width of like the midsection and pelvis. Because there's a bit of like that going on right there, and of course, shoulder blades up there, and then this dude's face is very like up here. I really messed up his head. I didn't get the perspective quite right. That's all right. Just know there's a bit of a head going on right there. Yeah, there's a lot of like stuff going on like down here, you know, with sort of like those muscles squashing and stretching, but I don't want to pay too much attention to all that because there's definitely something to be said for like simplification of like all of the forms and everything. You know what I'm saying? Especially when you're like working with a brush pen, there's a bit of like permanence in ink. You're gonna like don't just ignore the head there. See, a lot of people will start with the head. I don't want to do that. I would like to start with the body, which is why I chose to like study the torso first. I felt like I would like follow that a bit better. So this individual, definitely he's got some spine curvage going on right here, especially as it like comes up here. So we have his lats that are going to be like right here, which means his arms sort of like come up like that. And then from the front, it's like up here you have like his neck, especially with his like traps. His traps would be right there, delts wrap around. That's like his arms right there. Right. And then you have the front, you have the right here, you would have the what that we called the collarbone. Yep. I know what I'm talking about. Coming down right here, then pecs sort of come in right there, and he has sort of it's pretty thick abs. His arms would be like coming forth right there though. You would come down right here. This is his midsection. You would have his the curve of his spine like on like right there ish, and with his like belly button like right there ish, coming down. Then all his business going on way down here. Boom. Try and depict his head a bit better right here. Where like comes up. Still know the perfect. I've been doing a lot of studies, you know, on how to like draw the head, and there's still like I can't think of a perfect way to like draw the head. you have the traps that are sort of like right here. They form like almost like a cone, then it goes up and connects to like the neck. And I guess if you were to base off like muscles here, you would also have muscles coming from the corners of the neck, or not the corners, the sides of the ears down to the front of the neck. But we won't pay attention to all that right now. All right, final one next. Hope all you guys are enjoying this. Sometimes you just have to do. Sometimes you just really have to do like freehand stuff to like loosen yourself up a bit, really, because I mean, it helps quite a bit. So this one will be a pretty difficult one because there's quite a bit of like spinal curvature going, but I see a bit of, let's see, sort of like spine coming down right here. His pecs are like up here-ish. Definitely like that one's like right there. His arms kind of like up here. This one's stretched a bit more. His arm is sort of squashing right here, so we're going to see a bit of that going on. We'll cut his bicep off. We'll cut his bicep off. Yeah, we'll cut his bicep off a bit because delt comes down a bit, comes down a bit. His bicep would would be facing forward quite a bit, like that right there. Then there's the pectoralis major, but then you have the lats that form from the back. Yep, those come down quite a bit far right there. Same thing on the other side. See quite a bit of stretching going on there, and quite a bit of compression going on over here. You have the obliques right here. I think I've seen some people do when they do like this brush pen thing is like if they have like two body parts sort of like overlap, they'll erase the line in between them, which I find very interesting. I'd have to test that out a bit, I'm not entirely sure how to do that though. It's a rendering thing, but it's something I want to like look into. It's got a silly looking head. It's just the way that I did it. And that's the freehand. Stretches. Okay, so I stretch his lat maybe just a bit too much right here. See, I do have an issue of like elongating like the torso. It should really be more like you have like your box right here, then you have like a that right there. This would be like your pecs and everything. You know what I'm saying? Like right here, and then you would have like your pelvis down here from which your legs like attached to. You know. I do have a tendency, especially in freehand, to sort of elongate it a bit. So like, definitely one of the things I need to pay more attention to is like proportion. You know, because it's hard. It's hard. Drawing's hard, and having an eye for things is hard. And it's something you kind of like learn. You know, and learning is hard. So it's one of the things that no one really talks about is that learning is very hard. Well, if you look at like old like marble statue, like ancient Greek statues, they elongate a lot of body parts. So I guess it is up to the artist. Okay, where's the cap? No, it's right there. Okay, well, that is my amazing uh my amazing uh anatomy anatomy uh practice. Hope that you all learned something cool about this, maybe about your selves. You know, maybe you figured out what it is that you need to look for in anatomy. Maybe you figured out uh, what it is that you were missing. Maybe you didn't, but regardless of that, I hope that all of you had fun because I know that I definitely had quite a bit of fun doing this. I do really like drawing. I do really like drawing. I know sometimes I'm like oh this sucks. I can be very down and hard on myself, but just know that I do really enjoy this quite a bit. Actually, I think drawing is so cathartic, and it's one of the most fun things you can do. And I am glad that I'm taking sort of this like extra step to like try and like learn a little bit more about the human body, about how to draw it in a way that I find to be like pleasing. You know what I'm saying? This guy's body really tilting that way a little bit. That would sort of like be like the pelvis right there. The legs would connect. They do connect a bit like that. They are on a socket joint, so they would sort of like be out like that. You know what I'm saying? I guess this guy from behind would look kind of like this. You know, you got like the spine right there. That sort of like goes down a little bit. And you got the pelvis, which would be tilting uh forward some. So we would be seeing it more from like a view like that right there. a little bit at the bottom, like that, right there, because then from the front you would see like them tingies. Okay, well, this has been a lovely stream, everybody. I do hope that you all will check out the streams in the future because I have a lot of fun doing these. I'm gonna point my camera back up so I can give the final goodbyes. You can see me. Hello, yes, I put on headphones during this because I would like to listen to music. I can't have you guys listen to music. Sorry, I don't want to get copyright infringement on my stream. But yeah, that was my little sneak peek into learning anatomy through Bridgman. You can sort of see places where it comes intuitively. You can see some places where I'm struggling a bit. This definitely helps for me because I can sort of pinpoint those things a little bit easier. They're saying I'm the next XQC or the next Moist Critical. So, like I am probably the best streamer that is on this website currently. All right. I have nothing else to say. Thank you everybody for watching this stream. I hope you all have a good night. We will not be streaming next week. We will be streaming the week after. But if you miss me, or if you want to talk to me, or you want to show me your art, or you want to ask questions about art, go ahead and join the Discord. There's a link to that in the description of this stream. And go check out other videos on the channel. There's a pretty big backlog of streams that are all long and they're all useful. They're all useful, and I swear to God, they're all useful. You heard it from me first. No, I am not biased. I'm not a biased party in all of this. Yeah. Okay. We will catch you in the next stream. We will be covering Bridgman anatomy again. We still might be on the torso. I'm not sure. We're moving to the legs next, so maybe by the next stream 2 weeks from now, I will have moved on to the legs. But in the next 2 weeks, I'm gonna try and get my proportion in line. I'm gonna try and like hone that in a little bit more. So yeah, I suck at editing these things. Goodbye. Good night, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. Good night, everybody. Good night, everybody.